Really excited for this week's episode of Podcast on the Brink, taping this on the morning of Friday, July 3rd. And we're joined by Jeff Goodman, who covers college basketball, pro basketball, basketball at all levels, really. Welcome back to Podcast on the Brink, Jeff.
No, thanks for having me, Alex. Appreciate it. Hope all is well with you, your family, your dad, who I haven't talked to for a little while. So hope all is well out there and with everybody.
So I want to cover a lot of ground with you, but I want to start by saying, it's been an interesting ride so far for Archie Miller in Bloomington. He's preparing for his fourth season at IU. How would you assess the progress he's been able to make since taking over for Tom Crean back in the spring of 2017?
Steady. That's probably the word I would use. Steady progress. Not what people envisioned, not what people wanted. In Bloomington, if you had said the first 3 years, I would have wanted more. I expected more. However, I think, again, and I've been adamant about this, I don't think the former coach and the former staff left Archie Miller with a full deck or even close to a full deck of cards. I think he left him with a shitty deck for the most part. And I know people didn't want to hear that, but that's true. And I think, again, there's some bad luck involved as well. But I've been pretty clear in my vision and what I think Archie Miller will end up doing in Indiana. And I think last year was kind of a step in the right direction. And next year, despite the loss of Justin Smith, I know some people will value that as a significant loss, and it may be to some degree. But I think they'll be even better next year. I do. Do I think a Final Four is on the horizon in the near future? Maybe not. But I think what you need is for Indiana to be consistent in the tournament every single year and be consistent. And I think that's the key.
So you have Indiana, I believe, in the latest preseason rankings that I could find, that you did at 32nd in the country, which is, I think, 6th among Big Ten teams right now. Assuming that we do have a season of some sort next year, what do you like most about this group going into the year, and what is your biggest question mark maybe?
I like the guard play. I think that's the biggest thing I really like from obviously you got Trace, but I think if Finney's healthy now, you're talking about a guy, if he's healthy, he's a veteran, and you're bringing Lander, who's obviously super talented. So you've got the best teams to me have two guys that can play the point, two guys that can effectively play the point. You look at it in the NBA. I think if you have that in college, two guys that can handle the ball, make plays for themselves, make plays for others. And I think that's what you have with Finney and Lander. So I like their balance. I think they've got enough quality players in their top 7 or 8 right now. I'm excited to see if Jerome Hunter can make a jump from last year. Obviously, dealing with the injuries, the health issues that he had where he couldn't play his freshman year. I think if he's healthy, he can make another jump. So I like him just because, again, I think they've got a core back. I think their chemistry is good. And they started to kind of experience what winning's all about. And listen, the fact that I have them 6th in the Big Ten doesn't mean a whole hell of a lot, because I think it's so bunched up in the league. And, there's a few teams that I think nationally are at a different level right now. But everybody else is about the same. I mean, I got Kentucky at like 24. So, and people, they hate me there anyway, but they're killing me for having them all the way down at 24. And I'm like, well, listen, if you go in today, who's your starting big man? You don't have one. You don't have one right now. So a lot of things can change. But I like Indiana's roster, and I believe in Archie Miller as a coach. I do. I know some Indiana guys don't, some Indiana fans. But I think he's a hell of a coach, and I think once he kind of solidifies this and just gets to whereas he knows who he has. They're his guys. He's got some veterans. I think there'll be a team that's in the NCAA tournament every year.
Is that a huge adjustment for him, do you feel like, going from Dayton, where maybe you're recruiting a different kind of kid that maybe has a chip on his shoulder, and now he's recruiting Romeo Langford, Trace Jackson Davis, Christian Lander? These are the 5-star type of kids. Is it a different tactic to getting those guys to respond? Because at Dayton, it was probably easy to push a guy's button and say, hey, nobody in the Big Ten wanted you. Show me what you can do, or these guys could go anywhere.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. I mean, it's a different caliber player, and you're dealing with higher expectations. You're dealing with every kid who goes to Indiana thinks they're an NBA player, right? Every kid. I mean, you could say that about a lot of kids at Dayton too, but it's every kid who commits to Indiana or any Big Ten school thinks they're an NBA player, period, 1 to 13. And that's hard for a guy like Arch to deal with, because Arch is a no-nonsense, no bullshit guy, period. Part of the reason I love him, and I know I'm not supposed to say that, but as a media person, I love Arch because I don't have to sift through the bullshit. Like your previous coach, I felt you had to sift through the bullshit. I did. And I'll say that publicly. I don't care. He's not alone, Tom Crean. The majority of them are like that, which is why I respect Archie Miller. And I love those post-game press conferences because they're always entertaining, because if you ask him a question, you're going to get an answer. You may not like it. The players may not love it. He's going to offend somebody a lot of times, but at least you know you're getting real. And I don't know. I miss getting real.
Why do you think so many guys aren't real like that?
Afraid
to make somebody mad, or what?
Yeah, I mean, some people don't like confrontation, number one. Some people worry about their jobs and how that affects them in job security. Some people are afraid it'll hurt them in recruiting. And it probably does to some extent with some of these guys who are real. But I don't know. I mean, again, I just think there's so many bullshitters and used car salesmen that's not Arch. And that's the one thing, if you're an Indiana fan, you should be proud of. You got a coach that, like, doesn't give a shit, just wants to coach ball, doesn't really want to deal with us as media people. You know this. I mean, he doesn't want to, but when he does, he's entertaining, and he will give you great information that I think will help all of us, whether it's fans, whether it's media, because, again, you're not trying to figure out what the spin is on it, which I always feel like. I always said this about Patino, Calipari, some of these guys, that you just flip it. Whatever they're telling us, just flip it around. And that's the truth.
Yeah, I mean, he also shows up to his press conferences in a timely manner, which I think all of the IU media could appreciate.
Wait, Crean didn't do that? Wait, Crean, come on. Crean, I remember once, I think Crean, boy, it might have been at Marquette even. Might have been at Marquette or Indiana. I think it was at Indiana when he was at the Garden. Made us wait like an hour and a half or something insane. And that's not the way to make – I know we shouldn't be this way, but it's not the way to make fans with the media at all. Because if you keep us waiting for that long, we're going to get pissed off just because we're media and we're either hungry or we have to hit a deadline, right?
Yeah. I mean, the Big Ten last year was no doubt the best league in the country. I'm sure you agree with that. You've got, I think, 9 teams in your top 43 going into next year. Where we sit today, which I know there's still a lot of uncertainty of who's coming back. You know, there's a lot of NBA decisions still to be made. But do you believe the Big Ten's going to be the best league in the season best league in the country next season again?
Yeah, I do. Just because I think you've got really good teams at the top as well, like Iowa. Again, this is all predicated on the fact that, you know, Luka Garza comes back to school, that we have a college basketball season, and we feel pretty good about it because, you know, the deadline to withdraw is a month from today. Okay, it's a month from today. And are they going to have any more information a month from today than they have right now? I mean, seriously, there's going to be no combine still. We're probably not going to have any idea because they're just going to be starting NBA at that point. So I don't think they're going to say, all right, combine is next week. So I think these kids are going to have a tough decision to make, not, you know, with, again, the uncertainty of, is there going to be a college hoop season? Or do we go overseas or whatnot? But I think as long as, like, Garza comes back from Iowa, we know Wisconsin's going to be really good. I think Michigan State, with Josh Langford coming back, and Tillman's obviously a huge, huge decision for them. You got 3 teams that I have in my top 10. And then you've got really good depth all the way down this year coming up in the Big Ten. Like you said, I don't remember how many it was.
Not 9 in the top 43.
Yeah, I mean, that's strong. That's strong. So I think it'll be the best league again from top to bottom and the deepest.
Do you think Garza and Tillman should come back or go?
Well, okay, so we'll play the game here of in a month we don't know, right?
Right.
So they
Yeah.
got to make a decision in a month, and they're going to have no more knowledge in a month really than they have right now. Boy, it's hard because Tillman's got a kid, right? Tillman's got a kid now. He's got to take care of his family. I think his stock could go up a little bit more. I do, but I also think this is a really, weaker draft overall, a weaker draft. Garza can make some money overseas, no doubt about it. Can he make a team? I think he can make a team on like a two-way. I don't know, man. To each his own on these. Those are two tough decisions. That I don't think Garza can have a better year than he had last year.
Right. That's
I guess I would say for Garza, go, come back, get your degree. Tillman, you could go either way. I might say go also with the uncertainty going on. Go take care of your family if you can. But again, they could both be in the G League next year playing in front of nobody. Well, they could both be in college basketball playing in front of nobody. So it's so hard to tell these kids or give any advice what they should do with the current landscape in our country the way it is. Really hard.
So Archie was hired at IU the same offseason that Chris Holtmann was hired at Ohio State. That was obviously a little bit different circumstance. Brad Underwood also took over at Illinois that offseason. Are you surprised that so far, I mean, I think you would agree with me, at least in terms of on-court success, Holtmann has been the most successful of the three. Does that surprise you at all?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I put Holtmann right there with Archie in coaching. I mean, what he did at Butler was nothing short of amazing with the talent that he had there and the lack of point guard play to take them to 3 straight NCAA tournaments. I think Holtmann's done a great job. I think Ohio State's a great job. Really, really good job, underrated nationally. And he inherited some good players too. He inherited some good players. I think that helped him. But yeah, I mean, listen, to me, again, I think this whole thing is cyclical a little bit in terms of once you get it going and you have some momentum, it's certainly a lot easier to keep it going. And that's kind of what Holtmann inherited at Ohio State. I know, listen, Thad Matta hadn't done a great job the last few years, but still, that Ohio State program had been pretty steady under Thad Matta for a long time.
So right now there's obviously a lot of uncertainty due to COVID-19 in terms of what a fall college sports schedule could look like, a winter college sports schedule. What are you hearing right now from coaches and administrators in terms of the level of optimism of having either a fall or winter sports season for college sports?
They're all over the board. I talk to tons of coaches every day, ADs. They're all over the board. Some, like we're seeing Rick Pitino come out and say, hey, let's just have a conference season and start in January. I had one head Power 5 head coach yesterday tell me he thinks we should even start it in February, and try to jam it all we can, start in February, no non-conference games. The hard part of pushing it back too far is what do you do with final exams? I would love May Madness. I think, honestly, this is a year to try college basketball as a one-semester sport, right? And play it starting, normally I would always say one-semester sport, start it after college football ends and push everything back as far as you can go back while still having finals right before the NCAA tournament, if you can do that. So obviously schools are different, but, most schools are done with finals in April. By, the earliest they're going to finish is in April. So, again, I think it depends who you talk to, the level of optimism. It's not what it was a month or 2 months ago. I think right now, a lot of people are worried that college football is going to screw this thing up and the NCAA is going to screw it up. And my personal thought on it is we better have contingency plans and we better have good leadership. And we've never had that from the NCAA, going back, years. And then even going back to, when all the conference tournaments were canceled, Alex, look at how that played out. Remember that day? that Thursday, and you had, all I remember was me tweeting out every single conference tournament canceling individually. Well, why the hell wasn't Mark Emmert or somebody on the phone with every conference commissioner and saying, okay, guys, what are we going to do? Let's put out one blanket statement. NCAA is saying every conference tournament is canceled. Like, how can you not figure this out? And again, part of it goes back to they don't have a college basketball commissioner. It's a complete joke. That needs to change. And I think, that's one problem here, why a lot of people don't have confidence that this thing is going to play off for college football. And if it's not going to play off for college football, it's hard to imagine how college basketball is going to get off the ground.
So yeah, that brings me kind of to a follow-up in terms of the NBA. There's clear leadership in terms of having a commissioner, and you have the Players Association. In college sports, there's nobody who's going to step up and make this decision. Who ultimately is going to make the decisions on what happens if, say, the Pac-12 says we're not going to play, but the SEC and the Big Ten says we are? Is there going to be somebody that steps in and says we're all going to have to go the same route, or is it just kind of be a free-for-all? Because I think from just an organizational standpoint, that would be a nightmare if there was no plan that everybody was following in concert.
Well, I think that's the issue, right? Is like the Ivy League may make a decision here soon that they're not going to play college football either in the fall or at all. So who are those teams playing in the non-conference for football? I'm talking. And we all know SEC football is going to go down fighting, right? They're going to be the last ones standing before they throw in the towel and say we're done, because frankly, there's just too much money to be made off SEC football. So I don't know how it's going to work. I almost feel like it's going to be last man standing. You're going to have some teams that don't play at all in some leagues, other teams that try to play, and then throw in the towel after a few weeks when multiple players come down with COVID. Or, you've got a lot of schools right now, basketball programs that are saying we're not bringing our kids back for summer school because it's not worth the risk of, if we bring those kids back for summer school, first of all, we got to pay for summer school. Number two, if they come down, we get 5-10 players that come down with COVID, it's going to hurt our enrollment for school at $50,000 a pop. What if we lose 100 students? That's more important, and the revenue is more significant in that than whatever money we're going to make from MAC football, right? Or Atlantic Sun basketball. So there's just so many different motives here and different situations. Again, you got SEC football at the highest end. You've got Atlantic Sun basketball at the lowest end. And how do we figure it out? Well, I think the first thing Mark Emmert should do is say, you know what, basketball, nobody comes back on campus right now. Everybody go home, or no workouts, none of that. I don't think he should have brought anybody back. And because now you've got an uneven playing field as well, in addition to the fact that you've just got more bodies on campus. Let's just try to get the spring sports off. Worry about them. Keep them there. Football is obviously the money maker. Just worry about them. Okay, so we're not going to have kids working for 2 hours a week with coaching. Who gives a shit? Who gives a shit if they come back at the end of August and they haven't had the last 2 months to work for that's the way it was for years anyway. I don't know. There's no leadership. There's no leadership, period.
So another thing I've been thinking about, Indiana's supposed to be going to, and I laugh when I say this, supposed to be going to Maui, right? There's Battle for Atlantis. There's all these other preseason tournaments. Do you see any way that these events happen? I mean, what kind of appetite is there going to be from fan bases to travel to Maui to watch basketball, or travel to Battle for whatever, Cancun? Yeah. I don't know. There's so many of them, you can't keep track of them, but it seems like to me that these events aren't going to happen. Is that kind of where you're sitting at this point, unless we have some type of breakthrough with medicine or something that kind of stops the spread of this virus?
I'd be very surprised. I mean, are you getting on a plane? Now, some people are flying right now. I talked to somebody yesterday in the industry, and they've been on 4 flights. I haven't. I'm not ready to do that yet unless I absolutely have to. Somebody also told me that Maui is open to travel soon or something, that he was going to go to Maui and sit in the beach for a while here. I'm not ready to do that. The only thing I'll say is things have changed a lot in the last 2 months, right? I mean, from my perspective, where I sit here in Boston, we went from 2 months ago where we were, I think, second in New York at that point in terms of deaths per day. And 2 days ago, 3 days ago, there were no deaths in Massachusetts. There were about 30 here yesterday. So things can change. But on the flip side, look at what's going on in Arizona and Texas and California, some of these other states. They're obviously getting worse. So I think it's hard to figure right now where we're going to be in November, but there better be a plan B, on a contingency plan to maybe bring the Maui tournament over here. I would just do that. I mean, to me, that's the most logical right now, is just find another venue to have Maui, to have Battle of Atlantis, to have all of these events, just have them here for this year.
Another major change this offseason, I know that's impacted, obviously, me. It's impacted you because I know you go to Peach Jam every year. There's no evaluation periods this summer. It doesn't look real good for any of that happening this fall either. I know at one point there was talk of it, but that kind of got tabled. What will be the long-term impact, if any, of kind of a lost summer of no grassroots basketball?
A lot of shitty evaluations, a lot of mistakes made. I was told recently, one school just took a commitment from a kid that they've never seen in person. And they're not going to be the only ones. I mean, that's going to happen more and more. Some schools are waiting before doing that, hoping that they don't have to go that route. But ultimately, a lot of them are going to have to go that route because, there's a lot of coaches that don't go out during the season. I remember Roy Williams telling me he doesn't go out much during the season, but he's out every day during April and July. That's when he does all his recruiting. So he hasn't seen a lot of these kids in a year. A lot of these kids are blowing up right now on tape, and I want to write something on this, and I may if I get some time next week. But they're blowing up because they're marketing themselves. And if you make it easy for coaches, get them the tape, make it easy for them to evaluate. A lot of them have gone from mid-major to high-major kids without playing a single game over the last couple months. And again, I think, there's going to be a lot of poor evaluations made because of this. And it's not even the coach's fault. I mean, this is just the way it's going to go right now because they got to start taking players when kids start committing. And it really hasn't happened yet, but it's going to happen at some point. When they start committing, it's just going to be an effect of, snowball type effect where other kids are going to see that and say, I got to commit. Then coaches are going to start offering kids even more that they haven't seen. And again, I think the transfer list will grow significantly in the next year or two.
I know we've talked mostly here about college basketball, but I do want to get into the NBA for a little bit because you cover that so closely, and I respect your opinion greatly on it. But the season's scheduled to resume later this month in a state that you didn't mention in terms of the outbreaks earlier, but Florida's right up there with, I think, Texas and Arizona, and I don't know the other one, California, maybe you mentioned. But they're supposed to start playing again at the Walt Disney World Resort. It's supposed to be a bubble. I'm not sure how that's exactly going to work with workers and things of that nature coming in and out. But do you think this was a well-constructed plan first, and do you think it will be successful ultimately?
I think Adam Silver is a smart guy, other than the fact that you see this proposal of a second bubble in Chicago, and that's when I shake my head and like, what are we doing? A second bubble with all the shitty teams? Like, for what? For what? It makes no sense. But I do like the idea of the first bubble for the most part, because I think it's contained, and you can do that. You got it in one city, in one venue, rather than NHL is going to do two cities in Canada, which at least it's in Canada where the numbers are really, really low. But I trust in Adam Silver more than probably any other commissioner. I think he's very smart. I think he's trying to account for every detail in this thing. But again, listen, it's going to go off, and we're going to have some issues. And what happens? How do you make sure that nobody leaves this bubble and goes out to a club in Orlando and comes back? Or some of the workers, right, from Disney, they're coming in and out of the bubble. So, you can't be 100% safe here. But I think he's doing the best job he can to make sure that we have some sort of a postseason. And we're within a month now of them starting games. A bunch of guys have come down, have tested positive. And the question will be how many other guys bail, and are we getting an NBA playoffs, which is watered down. You've got Avery Bradley who's bailing, DeAndre Jordan tested positive. So some guys here. I mean, Avery Bradley's a key piece of the Los Angeles Lakers. Nobody will really talk about that because he's not a big name, but that could absolutely affect the Lakers' ability to win a championship this year. But listen, as long as we've got LeBron, AD, Kawhi, Paul George, the main guys, Giannis, people are going to be fine. They're going to watch because there's an appetite to watch anything right now. I mean, shit, I'm watching, UFC, which I've never watched before. I'm watching, horse races during the day because there's nothing else to watch, right? Am I wrong? Aren't you just kind of whatever you can do?
I've watched some old NBA games. That's the level of desperate. The one thing about the NBA plan, and I don't know if you have any insight on this or if you've heard anybody talk about this, but one of the biggest questions I have is, all right, you've seen the schedule, they're starting in late July, right? And there's going to be basically games every day, all day. And then the playoffs are going to start. And then they've kind of set this date of October 12th or 13th, I think, when the season could end.
Yep.
Then there's the draft. And then there's the next season starting apparently in early December. My question is, if there's an outbreak of COVID on a team that's in the playoffs and say 6 of the key players on a certain team get it, what's the contingency plan for that? I mean, do they just keep playing and say, oh, all right, for example, Milwaukee, you have to play without Giannis and Chris Middleton. Let's see how you do. How does that – I've not heard anybody talk about that. I mean, I guess they don't want to talk about the possibility of it happening because they hope it doesn't. But what happens in a situation like that?
Yeah, I'm sure internally they have to have had those discussions, right? If a major player tests positive and has to go into quarantine for 2 weeks, what do we do? How many players would it take on a given team before we say, hey, we have to shut this thing down? Because obviously you can go forward without LeBron. It's not the ideal situation, but losing one player, you can move forward. But that player will have been around the rest of his team. So how do we feel? If one player gets it, how are we going to be able to kind of move forward? Potentially with other players then getting it. So I don't know. I mean, I don't think anybody has the answer to that. I think it's kind of a wait and see approach and pray and just pray that this thing goes off, just like college football. But I think the NBA, the pro leagues have a major advantage because they can control their players, number one, in a sense that they're pros, where they're going to be pretty much at all times. Where college, it's like, all right, once they leave, we don't know who they're with, right? We don't know what bar they're going out to. You should be able to try to, say, hey, if I'm the coach if I'm Nick Saban, it should be, hey guys, you know what? No, you're not going to any bars. Like, do not be in a bar or we're removing your scholarship. I don't know if they can do that, but that's what they need to do. That's what they need to. If you want college football to go off right now, they've got to be a lot more cautious than I think they've been.
How has this changed your day-to-day in terms of how you do your job? You obviously are one of the more plugged-in guys, talk to as many coaches and administrators as possible. You are at a ton of games during the season, conference tournaments, NCAA tournaments missed. Obviously, the grassroots scene is something that you also follow. What have you're talking to me now from your office. What's this time been like for you, and how are you still able to be productive?
It's been busy. I mean, honestly, I feel like if you love your job, which I always have, I always tell people, like, I haven't worked really a real day of my life. I've been fortunate. So there's always stuff I can do, I mean, early on it was busier than anything because transfers, kids declaring for the draft. There was plenty going on. And, I've done some projects. I'm in the middle of one of them where I'm going through the top assistants in every league as voted by their peers, every single league I'm going to do. We did rating every athletic director in the country based on their football and men's basketball hires. I did that with Brett McMurphy. So I feel like if you want to work, Trust me, there's plenty you can do. Whoever you are in this industry, there's stuff you can do. It's been fun for me. My daughter is 16 and she's a high school sophomore. She finished her sophomore year. And there's a girl that was not a sports fan at all. And all of a sudden in the last year, now somehow, some way loves sports. So I've tried to help her, and she's doing interviews with players and coaches and whatnot. Maybe I'll see if Arch will do an interview with her. How do you think that'll go?
I think he'd probably do it.
He would do it.
For you.
He absolutely would do it. That's the type of person that I think people don't realize that Archie is, that he would absolutely do it. The hard part for me is always like, not having her get special treatment. Like I've always said that as a media person, but now I'm like, I don't give a shit. I'm in my 40s. I have a daughter who's going to be out of the house. We only have one kid. She's going to be out of the house and in college in a couple of years. I don't give a shit anymore what anybody thinks of me if I can bring her to a game and enjoy it with her and help her be happy and get better at something. And her social skills, I think, have gotten better through this. She's way better than me. Honestly, she's better than I am today, Alex, on air. Like already. Now, I suck on air. We know that. But she's really good. I think that generation is good because, and it's a little bit younger than you, but you started it where I think these kids now are constantly in front of their cameras doing videos from a young age. So they've got that advantage now when they're doing these Instagram, live deals. She's doing them with again, like Scott Drew, Doug McDermott, whoever it is. She's so much more comfortable than I am, and certainly was when I broke in. And I always was a writer. I never, ever thought I'd be on TV. So that, why would you put me on TV with how I look? You shouldn't.
I always think your lists that you do with the polling the coaches are so interesting. Do you ever get certain coaches that don't want to participate, or even though that's anonymous, and do you just stop asking at some point, or how does that work?
Yeah, you get a few, but I think most are good with the anonymous because again, I think they know they can trust me. They've done this before and it's never gotten out there. I'm never going to tell anybody anything if it's anonymous like that. So I just feel like, I watched ESPN and my good friend Jeff Borzello put up their top 40 under 40 about a month or so ago, top 40 coaches under the age of 40. Yeah. And I was not a huge fan of it, to be honest. Just because I think, first of all, they mix assistant coaches with head coaches, which is hard to do. Second of all, when you're doing this yourself, and I've tried it, trust me, I think I'm as plugged in as just about anybody in this industry. And it's still very, very difficult to do because we don't know what all those guys do behind the scenes. We don't know who's doing scouts. Borzello is really plugged in. But Myron Metcalf not as plugged in. John Gassaway not as plugged in as Myron. So I just felt like it was hard to do for those guys. Where I decided I'm going to do it, and I'm going to poll 20 plus assistants from every league in America to give me their top 3 assistants within that league. Not a perfect scenario, but better than anything else I felt like you could do to try to figure out who the best assistants are in each league. And I really did it for a lot of the low and mid-major guys that I don't know to find out who are the best guys in each league or who are perceived to be the best guys. So, yeah, you get a lot of coaches that are pissed off because they're not on the list or whatever. And you know what? So be it. Like, I didn't get in this business to make everybody happy. I got in this business and I worked for the Associated Press. And my deal every day is I wake up and I'm going to be honest, at least with the information that I have. Am I always going to be right? No. But I'm going to be honest with what I have. I'm not going to bullshit you. I'm not going to kiss ass. Like, again, I'll call a spade a spade. And like, I just feel like too many people these days, all they want to do is kiss ass for information. And it's sad because some of the people that have the information are the people that should have really good opinions. And they don't because they just want to kiss ass to get information. And that sucks.
I think it's interesting that you brought that up because I have a couple students that write for me every year, and I talk to a lot of students, and I'm just curious kind of your career path. You've kind of been you've worked at a variety of places. You've obviously been at ESPN, and to me, and this is just my opinion, you can correct me if I'm wrong, you seem more comfortable now that you're away from that, like in terms of not being on TV. You mentioned that earlier, and you can just kind of give your opinion and say what you think, whereas maybe during that time you couldn't be as opinionated as you wanted. What's kind of, what's the journey been like for you, kind of being at a variety of different stops, and how did you ultimately find your voice to where you just kind of gave your opinion and you didn't apologize for it?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're younger, right, you're trying to figure out what you can do. And, like I said, I learned from the Associated Press, which was the right way to learn from in journalism, right? But it was playing it straight. Everything I wrote was kind of more factual and, game stories and things of that nature. So it took me a while, even when I got to Fox, to understand, all right, I could have a little bit of a voice. But I also felt like, there were times when I pushed it and I shouldn't have. I'll give you a good example. Like Tubby Smith gets fired at Kentucky. And even before he got fired, I think I put it out there saying like Tubby should be fired because he was recruiting so shitty. Like he wasn't getting the players that you should be getting at Kentucky. And I was kind of young, still breaking in at that point to some degree. And I went up to him maybe 4 or 5 years ago. We were at a charity event together, and I apologized to him. I said, Tubby, man, like, my bad. Like, I screwed up because what I didn't know, and I kind of knew it, but it didn't figure into me writing it, was that you did it differently. While a lot of other guys were cheating their ass off, you weren't cheating your ass off. You were doing it the right way, and it wasn't apples to apples. So I shouldn't have been as critical to you as I was. So I think you learn things. I'm certainly at a point in my career now, but I have been for a while. Listen, I've talked to John Calipari like twice in the last 12 years. I have no relationship with him. I've gone at it with Kay. In the summer, he's kind of come at me. I had a year where I didn't talk to Roy Williams. I went to Arizona. I had a year where I didn't talk to Sean Miller because I interviewed Book Richardson's wife and asked her on camera what her relationship was with Sean Miller and the staff. Well, Sean didn't like it. We didn't talk for a year. So be it. So be it. Like I'm not in it. I have a lot of people that I don't know if I consider friends in the business, because I still feel like if I got out of the business, there'd be like 3 coaches that would actually stay in touch with me after I'm out. I feel like so many of them, why do they stay in touch with you? Well, they don't want you to hurt them. Maybe number one. I think, whether or not, I don't really believe it so much, but I think some people feel like you've got some power, you've got some juice within the industry. And I kind of laughed at, they did some like top 100 most influential people. Somebody did that recently. I'm going to try to do my own, by the way, next year. I'm going to do top 50 most powerful. And it's not going to be me taking care of my buddies. Trust me. It's going to be the top 50 most powerful people in college basketball. I want to do that and do it right. I felt like that list that came out, there was some accuracies in there. There were some good names and everything like that. But I think there were some people that were just taken care of. And I thought it was heavy grassroots. And part of it was who did the list, obviously.
Last question, we'll get you out of here. How do you think all of these pending infraction cases, I guess they're going to go to some new committee that's been formed. How is that all going to, when the dust settles, is there going to be anything significant coming from any of this? Obviously, Oklahoma State, I think, is right now currently banned from the tournament next year, and I think they're petitioning hard, I guess, to get that overturned. But and ultimately, is anything going to change as a result of all these FBI investigations and subsequent cases?
So I talked to the woman who's running it, Naima Stevenson, yesterday, actually, who's running the whole independent process and overseeing it. And the big question I had for her was, all right, so there are 15 members of this panel now, and none of them are affiliated with the NCAA anymore. That's kind of the independent part of it. In the past, it had been basically there'd been some, a lot of the people that were judging, doing the, judge, jury, whatever of these cases had been affiliated with the NCAA. They've gone away with that. But what I asked her, my big question was, okay, are these people now, most of whom have a legal background, are they going to judge these cases differently? Are they going to judge them now where you're innocent until proven guilty, as they do in the court system? Or are they going to judge them like they have really recently with the NCAA, which is like, we can do whatever the hell we want, right? We don't need actual proof. Like I've said, and I'm not defending Will Wade here. Okay, I'm not defending him. Let's be clear. But what I'm saying here is, just because Will Wade said he made a strong ass offer does not mean there was money that changed hands. Okay. Don't we need proof on all this? And what she told me was, listen, they're still judging, these people in this new process are still judging these cases the same way based on the NCAA rules. So I don't think anything's going to change, Alex. I don't. And I think we're still going to have severe penalties in which they don't have to prove necessarily that Sean Miller, I mean, Arizona one's a little different because obviously Book Richardson, his assistant coach, took money. But I've thought, okay, with Book Richardson taking money, you've got that, and you had it with Oklahoma State. But I felt like this would result more in a coach's suspension than a postseason ban. I was surprised on the Oklahoma State one, but they cooperated. It's hard to say, but I would say because of what happened with Oklahoma State, I think all these schools are going to get hit hard. I've had people disagree with me and think that Oklahoma State's going to get hit the hardest, and that Kansas is going to skate and Arizona is going to skate because they're, big boys. I think you set a precedent here, and I think it's going to be awfully hard not to hit Arizona, not to hit Auburn, not to hit USC, that all also had assistant coaches taking money as part of this bribery scheme in college basketball. So I think some schools are going to get hit and probably should, from a standpoint of, listen, if we want to really clean up college basketball and scare some coaches, because nobody's been scared for years. Enforcement hasn't scared any coach for years. So I think if you hit hard, that is the one thing it will do. Now, again, with Kansas, with regards to Kansas, Alex, I mean, they're trying to show right now that Bill Self should have known that all these Adidas people were involved, that TJ Gassnell, that Jim Gatto, that those guys were involved and on his campus and doing business and whatnot. Well, listen, you and I both know TJ Gassnola was intimately involved while Tom Crean was at Indiana, right? Adidas. Right. Of course, they're helping him. Of course, Adidas is helping Indiana. Of course, Adidas is helping, Under Armour's helping Maryland, and Nike's helping Kentucky and Duke and Oregon. Like, that shit happens. So I don't know how they're going to play that Kansas case out. That'll be an interesting.
That's the hardest question to answer from fans when you get it. Like, why did a certain kid not go to a certain school? And a lot of times it's relationships, right? It's not, a fan, the everyday fan that maybe doesn't cover it as close or follow it as closely as we do. They think, well, how couldn't they love Indiana? They've got 5 national championship banners. I'm like, these guys weren't born in the last 33 years. The last time Indiana won a title, it's a different game now. This isn't recruiting Matt Nover in the early 90s. This is totally different scenario. So, but Jeff, I really appreciate the time. You've been more than generous, fascinating insight. Really enjoy your work. Where can people keep up with you? Obviously, you're big on Twitter. Where else can we find your work right now?
Yeah, Goodman Hoops, also on Stadium, and we'll be ramping up here soon, hopefully, when NBA starts up. And but probably the easiest place is, and it can be painful at times to follow me, but at Goodman Hoops on Twitter.
Thank you, Jeff.
You got it, Alex. Stay safe. Tell your dad I said hello, and hopefully we will see each other in person soon.
Absolutely.
Take care, man.
Take care.